Holy Spirit, we become temples of in baptism and chrismation. We're asking Him to give us an additional gift, this grace to be able to serve as subdeacons. So I must say this in the beginning, this is the foundation of any service, right? That we're relying on God's grace to be able to fulfill all the things that we're going to mention. In the third prayer, again, it's repeated in the deacon. It's the fourth prayer for the ordination of the deacon, and the third prayer for the ordination of the priest. And for the bishop, it's repeated but in a different way in Mark 10:4. Yes, Lord, make him worthy of the calling of the subdeacon. That's why, if you notice, when the chanters are being ordained, we just put the cross on their head. The proper way for a chanter to be ordained is just the cross on their head, signed 3 times. The proper way for the reader to be ordained. How's the reader ordained? It's not with a cross, with scissors, right? Right? So with scissors. So he's ordained in the name of Jesus. Y'all can come over here because I can't. I don't know. And then the subdeacon is ordained how? How's the subdeacon ordained? It's not like this. I mean, we go like this, but we go like this in the real ordination and in the subdeacon ordination, right? The deacon is ordained with the laying of hands. This is the laying of hands, right? Laying of hands is only for the deacon, the priest, and the bishop. What's the subdeacon? How's the subdeacon ordained? Sometimes, because there's so many ordinations, you might find that the bishop going like this too, which is not wrong for him to sign like this, yeah, as well. But the main thing needs to happen as well. Like that. Just the priest signs on the forehead, right? Just like the priest and the deacon, but yeah, and sometimes the priest and the deacon they go like this. We're saying this because the church saw that there's a resemblance, it's close to the ordinations of full consecration. Why is the rule, is there a rule in the early church that needs to be 21 years old? No. But we put that rule in the diocese, St. used to put that rule in the diocese because they used to have to make the decision to be married or not, to be celibate or not. So no one in our modern day will get married 21 or old, right? That's why that rule exists, right? That there's a level of maturity for those who are going to be serving in this capacity, serving in this rank. The subdeacon is one of the 7 orders of the Church of God. When you pray and you say in the liturgy, pray for the igumens, priests, deacons, subdeacons, and the 7 orders of the Church of God. It's one of the 7 orders of the Church of God in the beginning of the Church. And some of the early writers, they commented and said, the Lord Jesus Christ did all of these services. He served as a bishop because the bishop is the shepherd, so he said he is the good shepherd. He served as a priest because the priest's responsibility is to teach, and from his mouth, teaching is received. And he taught the people. He taught in the Sermon on the Mount. He served as a deacon because a deacon in Greek means servant, and he washed the feet of his disciples. He served as a subdeacon when? What's the responsibility of a subdeacon? The primary responsibility of a subdeacon? Yes?
I think الغلطة في الهيكل لما جه يطلع بيعة الحمام ويسافر.
Exactly, thank you. So when he cast out the money those who were selling in the temple, that was him doing the responsibility of a subdeacon. He was creating order in the Church of God. When there's disorder, the subdeacon is responsible for the order in the Church of God. That's why he usually, some of them are standing next to the doors to organize who's coming in and out of the church. Who's supposed to be there, who's not supposed to be there. Who's coming to communion, who's not coming to communion. Some child is crying, there's a distraction in the church, someone's making a ruckus. The subdeacons are responsible for that. And the reader is responsible for reading our Lord Jesus Christ read in the synagogue from the book of Isaiah. The specific prayer for the subdeacon after these 3 prayers is the 4th prayer. And in it we find a phrase that I mentioned for those who are here for the reader review. I mentioned this phrase. It's in the middle right before the ... Make your face shine upon your servant. Make your face shine upon your servant. This is a phrase, that's an ancient phrase, make your face shine upon your servant. This is right? Show your face upon this your servant. This is revealing that just like Christ did all of these tasks of the bishop and the priest and the deacon and the subdeacon and the leader, so we also are asking God, let yourself, you, O God, be manifest in this person that is going to take on this rank that you originally are the one who fulfills. You are doing his work. So that when he's organizing things in the church, people see him as Christ. You are Christ. Many times when there's organization in the church, especially when there's lots of big festivities going on, like when the ordination happened to the Lord Jonathan, God bring him back in peace, there's sometimes lots of tension, there's lots of difficulties, there's lots of things that we're not used to having car parking and organization of communion with so many different fathers giving communion, so it's different. And people are tense, people are tired from long services. Are we acting as Christ? Again, I'm saying this because I know that this is not the subdeacons that are doing this, but I'm trying to reveal to you this is the responsibility of the subdeacon. The subdeacon should be overseeing these things. But that requires the subdeacon to be faithful and consecrated in such a way that they're able to handle all the things that we're going to mention. In this prayer, it says, "O our Master and Lord God Almighty, who in the tent of testimony revealed those who adorn the temple as guardians of the holy vessels." So he's speaking about in the Old Testament, the Levites that would take care of all the articles of worship, and they would move them around from place to place. They were responsible. These were the subdeacons of the Old Testament. "Make your face shine upon your servant, who has been granted to be a subdeacon by the discriminating vote of those who have brought him into the midst. Fill him with Holy Spirit so that he might worthily handle the liturgical vessels." So we're asking for God's Holy Spirit to come and fill you so that he might do three things. Might worthily handle the liturgical vessels, that he might stand at the doors of the temple and might light the lamp of the house of your prayers. Might stand at the doors of the temple is number 2, and might light the lamp of the house of your prayers is 3. "You shall plant him in your church as an olive tree laden with fruit, which produces at all times fruit of righteousness." Your responsibilities. Organization. Number 1 is order. Think of if you've seen scouts in the churches. I'm not encouraging scouts to start when they're not here. You don't have scouts here. No. I'm not encouraging it. I'm saying that what they do in some churches is the responsibility of the subdeacon, right? The organization of the church. 5 things concerning order, concerning the people. It says in this prayer, "Who has been granted to be a subdeacon by the discriminating vote of those who have brought him into the midst." What does that mean? What does that allude to? There was no exam back then. What does that mean? Okay, certainly his father of confession needs to approve of his going forward to be nominated for this rank. What does that mean? The people approve. There's some sense of others. It's not just the priest, right? There's others that have brought him into the midst, right? And we say at the end of the reader, in the catechism for the reader, we say also other people have brought him into the midst, right? So just like you recently had the nomination of Abuna Jonathan, and it was received by the people, we don't know, or I personally don't know, in what way the people participated in the nominations of subdeacons or of deacons. But there was something. Why? Because you're called to serve the people. Part of the reason why there's a procession after the liturgical prayer, right, is for the people to know this person has been ordained to serve you, so you know who they are. Yes, it's a celebration. It's a way of rejoicing, but it's also a way of showing you to the people, this is the person who chose to be a servant. And as I said in the reader review, this prayer is being said for one person. It's said in the singular form. The bishop has to, on the fly, turn it into the plural, right? If there's multiple people being ordained to the subdeacon, right? But it's said in the individual form, meaning there's one at a time. Meaning it's important enough that there will be one at a time. Just like there's one priest, when Jonathan was ordained, one priest at a time. We're not ordaining a plethora of priests, right? So it's important enough that it will be one at a time. In the catechesis, just so we can have said the prayers, because we're going to mention things that have to do with these prayers and as we go along. The bishop is saying this, and if there's an archdeacon, he's the one that says it. "My son, you have been entrusted with a good grade, which is the subdeaconate." Good grade meaning the rank, right? The rank of the subdeaconate, right? "Therefore you shall perform those things which have been assigned to you. what are they? They are that you should follow after the deacon to assist him in the work of ministry as he follows after the custom. So essentially, your responsibility is whatever everyone needs help in, because there's no deacon here. Whatever everyone needs help in the ministry, you are to assist him in this. That's essentially your responsibility. It is necessary for you, therefore, to watch over the doors of the house of God, which is the church, so as not to allow a beast to enter it, neither a dog nor the heretics at the time of the holy services. So you're responsible for what comes in and out of the church, or who comes in and out of the church. When the deacon proclaims that none of the catechumens stand here, nor anyone who does not receive of the holy mysteries, then you shall pay attention to watch with great care over the doors of the church. Since, therefore, you have been entrusted to touch that which is holy, the holy liturgical vessels. So this is the second part. So the doors of the church, and now the holy liturgical vessels. Therefore, you should realize the measure of the honor and the gift which has been given you as a wise and faithful servant who eagerly does the will of his Lord. In some churches now we have welcoming committees. Okay? Someone that stands at the door and welcomes the people that are coming. In Florida, we have many people that come and visit for vacations. People that are coming to visit their family. How do we know if this person is coming to visit their family? This person is someone that's interested in the church, someone that just saw church on a Sunday, and there's someone random from some other country that's visiting America and says, let me just pray in one of the churches. I don't know what this church is. I just see a cross. Let me go pray there. Right? How are we going to know what the purpose of this person is, or who this person is? Is they come, maybe they're a newcomer, right? Who's supposed to greet them and know them? It's supposed to be the subdeacon, because they've been brought in by the discriminating vote of those who are brought into the midst, right? So they know the people. Number one is that they know the people. Are they visiting? Are they newcomers? They're collecting their information. They're the ones responsible for informing Abuna to ensure that with all the crowds that are there on Sunday on a busy day, that he knows that this person is here so he can greet them. You are right now the highest rank of the diaconate in the diocese. We don't have full deacons ordained. And so you're responsible for these things. Even if other people are handling them, if you were to live up to be able to do some of these, then you can ask them, do you need help with any of these things that we're talking about? Number two, ushers. Ensuring propriety. Propriety is a term that it means to conform to what is socially normal and acceptable in the speech that's acceptable, right? This person that has not come to the church before, right? How will they know what's expected of them? It's not that we're expecting them to do any and everything that we do as the faithful that have been born and raised in the church, right? Or that have been in the church for a long time. But how will they know so they don't feel uncomfortable when they're there, right? We ensure that people come in, they're entering, and they're standing in a respectful manner. We ensure that the men are standing on the men's side, the women are standing on the women's side. The children, they know that there's a responsibility behind, you have a responsibility for the children that you're bringing in. No food is entering the church. No little toys that make noise are entering the church, right? And on that point, no children should be here. No children should be here. Right? Especially if they're not ordained. Especially if they're not chanters. Especially here in St. Anthony's Church, I've had comments personally made to me that it's a distraction for the children that are standing here, or even in the hands of their fathers that are serving as deacons. If you are vested for the service, you should not have your child with you, because you are serving. What's the difference between you serving and not serving? It is a distraction. It's not that the child is doing it on purpose. May God bless the children, they're innocent, right? But if the child is going like this all liturgy long, or if the child has a phone in his hands and he's doing whatever he's doing with it, right? Even if the child is just standing there, right? Why is this child here and the rest of the children are in the congregation? Why do we have this area to begin with? It's for the deacons to lead. And as I asked before, what is the reason why a deacon would look towards the west? Tell me a reason why the deacon would look towards the west. What is the reason why the deacon, they're standing here. Why would a deacon go like this? There's no reason. There's absolutely no reason. Like, in the altar, there's 3 or 4 responses, besides the circus, the incense circus, in which you're looking towards the west. There's no reason. If a crash happens, like there's some loud noise, right? There's people out here that will take care of it. Ideally, there's subdeacons and servants that are responsible for those things, right? Just like we said, some people are at the doors. There's no reason, because when I look this way, the whole congregation wants to know what I'm looking at. I affect the rest of the people. The children matter is not a matter of innocence or purity or anything, right? It's a matter of distraction. It's a matter of distraction. Please take note of this, and if you see it, don't proliferate. I know that there's pressure when you have 2 or 3 kids, right? Sometimes the wife is taking care of one kid, and you say, okay, I need to be responsible. If you really have to be responsible in these cases, I commend you as wanting to be a faithful father, but that Sunday, don't dress. You're responsible for your child. It's not a long reason to not dress. Plus, that Sunday, don't dress. When you're able to, you have your rotation of service, then you're not taking your child in the altar, you're not taking your child to stand in the deacon pews with you. Please be mindful of this, because it's increasing, and unfortunately, I see it here, again, a lot. And I've made comments about it publicly, and people have come and spoken to me about it, even recently, after the ordination prayers, people came and spoke to me about it. And just so you're aware, these people also speak to me about other things for myself, too, that have nothing to do with you all. So I take that into consideration next time I'm coming, and the way that I'm speaking, the way that I'm giving a sermon, or whatever I'm doing, that they have comments about, then I will take that into consideration. But please. Number 3 is appropriate dress. If someone is dressed inappropriately, or children are coming in with shorts, thanks be to God, I don't see that often here. Who's responsible for telling them? Who's responsible for letting them know? I'm not saying that you take this responsibility upon yourself, that you go around now and you're telling people this, or you're organizing this. This is all with the blessing of Una, with the blessing of the person responsible for the diaconate, Dr. Megan, or anyone else responsible in a smaller form. Right? This is not something you take upon yourself. The clothes that people wear to church, maybe some of you have experienced this, I don't know, but growing up in New Jersey, and it's not because it's cold, this would happen in summertime, people would come with full suits. Men would come with full suits all year long. All year long, right? And this was the norm. If I'm not telling you you need to wear a full suit when you're coming to liturgy, that would be nice. But I'm not telling you you need to do that. But many times youth are coming in now with writing on their shirts, right? With music artists on their shirts. With sayings that are not wrong, and they could be worn outside, but it's on their shirt in the middle of a liturgy, right? I've seen, for example, a kid that said, I paused my game to be here. Is that wrong to have to wear that shirt at all? It's not necessarily wrong to wear that shirt. Well, I have some reservations about it, because there's some sense of addiction in it, right? Even though someone can buy it as a joke. But that's not appropriate to be worn in the church. You didn't pause your game to be a church. Right? It's even if you're not meaning that when you're wearing the shirt, your shirt has a meaning to it. Right? So you're responsible for that meaning. So when we see this, we have a responsibility to tell those people, this is not appropriate. It doesn't just come from a Una, right? And from the coordinators. When it comes from an older brother, then this means more, or it means something different than when it comes just from a Una, right? And I recall, I heard from people that were deacons with Abuna, not a priest again, but they were deacons with Abuna, so I would say that Yusuf, when he was serving in Dallas, you wouldn't be able to grow your beard. You don't grow your beard. And this, New Jersey too, there's some fathers that apply this rule. You don't grow your beard. You grow your beard, you're not serving as a deacon. I see you not clean shaven, they don't bless their fingers. Right? Now, the beard has become more normal, right? But at least I realize that when I'm coming to church, I'm looking appropriate, propriety, appropriate, right? That I'm not just going like with my hair all over the place and with my beard in whatever form it's in. I'm coming to meet God. This is for me, number one. It's not for people that see me. Number one, it's for me because it sets a standard for me where am I going? Who do I believe I'm meeting with? If you had a business meeting or you had an interview with a client, you would not go in that manner. So because of God's love and His mercy, His grace, we're going to take this for granted and we're going to come in whatever form we are or whatever clothing we're wearing. Right? That's not appropriate. Again, we're saying this for ourselves, but we're also saying it because the subdeacons are responsible for this order in the church. Number 4, organizing the people for receiving the Eucharist. Right? So there's the normal organization of the church, and then when a bishop comes, there's usually some sort of different organization. There's an additional person that can give communion. That should be smooth, right? There should be people that are responsible for where the lines are going to go, where they're going to, from one place to another. I know that there's other committees maybe that are doing this in the church, and many of the churches. But I'm revealing to you that this is the responsibility of the subdeacon. The prayers of the subdeaconate are clearly saying that they are responsible to not allow a beast to enter, neither a dog nor the heretics at the time of the holy services. When the deacon proclaims that none of the catechumens stand here, nor anyone who does not receive of the holy mysteries, then you shall pay attention to watch with great care over the doors of the church. So who's responsible for anyone that's not supposed to be partaking of the Eucharist to come up? It's the subdeacons. They shouldn't be confronted when Abuna is giving the distribution of the communion, the body and the blood, and then all of a sudden he finds someone in front of him he doesn't know. That should never happen. It's very embarrassing. It's very difficult for the person, especially if it's their first time coming to the church. They don't know any better. They're doing it in innocence. But who should be telling them? When should they know? They should know immediately when they walk in a very simple and a kind manner. Right? Welcome to the church. We understand who they are. Is it your first time? Welcome to attend and pray. And you can have someone near you. And many questions may arise. We'd be happy to sit with you afterwards to answer your questions. Okay? You're being courteous. And in the midst of that, you're telling them you're going to find that people will go up and at a certain point, please, and remain where you are. And then after this, the service is dismissed, and someone will come to you and will bring you up to receive the holy bread. Right? Just the blood, and you'll meet the woman. So you're going to go up, and you're going to take them with you. But wait until someone comes to you. Right? Don't go up on your own. Very simple. Number 5, in terms of order of the church overall, is serving the younger deacons and being an example to them. Just because of your height, you are responsible for the younger. Just because of your height. Just because they literally look up to you. Right? They literally see you as someone that is going to be an example for them. And many times, unfortunately, they're learning how to stand, they're learning how to pay attention or be distracted from the older things. Right? If they see anyone, again, as a little kid, we want the justification to do something. I said to the readers an example from my personal life. When I was in college, I would be able to attend the liturgy during the week. And so I considered Sunday liturgy on my own. I'll serve the younger crowd. So when there was a bunch of, maybe 10, 11, 12-year-olds, right? Then I saw that their older brothers, maybe 14, 15, 16, they were standing alongside them. And whenever their older brother or their brother's older friend, right, they would sit down, then immediately afterwards, they would sit down. And so I whispered to the older brother that sat down, told him within 20 seconds, your little brother's going to sit down. He looked at me. Within 20 seconds, he sat down. So he looked at me like I was talking. Something big to understand here. Right? It's logical. They want an excuse. The easy way out. Plus, I don't need to stand. If there's an option to sit, let me sit. Right? There's an option to be on my phone, let me be on my phone. There's an option to look at something over here, let me look at over here. There's an option to organize something and be distracted, right? And consider myself as doing something that needs to be done. Let me do it, right? Because I don't want to just stand here. But we're responsible for ensuring that we're participating. A reader's responsibility, right? Which I believe all of you are, not most of you again. Is to read and to explain the scriptures. So if you look at the requirements of the subdeacons, right, it's to be a servant, it's to fulfill the requirements of a reader, and it's to fulfill the requirements of a chanter. One of the requirements of a reader is for you to be a servant in the church. So all of you should be in some capacity serving, right? Whether you're serving in hymns classes, you're serving in organization, you're serving in the diaconate rites classes, you're teaching chanters of how to be prepared for ordination, not just the responses, but you see it, right? And unfortunately, it's a distraction for the people. When the chanter is being ordained, right, after the ordination, they didn't know what to do. We're trying to tell them to do prostration. They didn't know what a prostration is, right? Ideally, they would learn these things from their parents. But if they're not learning it from their parents, who are they supposed to learn it from? From who all? From the older deacons. How are they going to receive these things? How are they going to receive the things that we go over in passing in the conventions, right? How are they going to receive to make the sign of the cross and to bow and ever Abuna's blessing unless they see the deacons next to them doing it? If you have 10 people around you that are doing this, believe me, without anybody telling you, you're going to do this, right? And if you're not doing it, then the subdeacon next to you. You don't have to say a word. That's all they need. And they will remember these things. Maybe some of you, if you've been graced with people that were older than you, that were next to you when you were learning subdeacon, maybe you remember some of the people that did this. I remember. When it comes to teaching those who are younger than us, the way that we live is most important. There are canons, I'm not going to go over all these canons, right? But there are canons, if you search in the church history, for the subdeacons, or that are involving the subdeacons, right? So Canon 24 from the Council of Laodicea, from the 4th century, says, no one of the priesthood, from the presbyters to deacons, and so on in ecclesiastical order, to subdeacons, readers, singers, exorcists, doorkeepers, or any other class of ascetics, ought to enter a tavern. No subdeacon should enter a bar. Not that you shouldn't drink, you shouldn't enter the bar. You shouldn't enter the bar. Right? In the canons of the apostles, if any of the clergy be found eating in a tavern, let him be excommunicated. Just to eat in the tavern. To eat there, right? Unfortunately, we've heard many people speaking to us. Just yesterday, a mother was speaking to me, and I was asking about her son, and her son was asking her about friends, right? And saying, hey, would you allow this person to marry my sister? If this person approached you to marry my sister, would you allow this person to marry my sister? If you allow this person to marry, would you allow this person? He went through maybe, I don't know how many names, let's say 3 or 4 names, right? And the mother didn't feel comfortable with any of them. You know what he said to her afterwards? He said, these are all deacons in the church. Why do you want me to be a deacon? These are all deacons in the church. Why do you want me to be a deacon? This is what the youth are saying. It's a stumbling block. It's a huge stumbling block. Because if anyone walks into the doors of these churches and they don't know anything about the Coptic Orthodox Church, they see the people standing, they see people wearing white that are separate, they see people that are wearing these red things and these yellow things, and they don't know what they are. They see a man that's wearing a different type of hat, right? He must be distinct from them. And they see these people as representative, right? These people are leading somehow the congregation, right? They're responsible for being a greater example than the average person in the congregation. So, just like this black robe makes you think more of something that I may do, you're expecting me to be living according to the ways of God. If I do something contrary to the ways of God, or against the commandments of God, it is more of a stumbling block to you than if one of you does it. May God have mercy. But likewise, the same applies to you in your own rank. Everyone in their own rank and their own responsibility. Order when it comes to, so we spoke about 5 things in order concerning the people themselves. Number 1 is knowing the people, and we talked about like the welcoming committee. Number 2 is ushers, ensuring the propriety and what's entering the church, that they're going to sit in an appropriate manner, and the calmness in the church. Number 3 is appropriate dress and how they're behaving why they're in the church, or what they're coming to the church with. Number 4 is organizing the people for receiving the Eucharist. Number 5 is serving the younger deacons and being an example to them by our lives, number 1, before the church services. Order in the church and sanctuary outside of the liturgical prayers, or outside of the service times, but in preparation for them. So we haven't yet started the service. The prayers of the subdeacon talk about lighting the candles, filling him with Holy Spirit, that he might light the lamp of the house of your prayers. That's what it says. Not just filling the oil, but back in the day, the candles were wax candles, right? What does the wax candle symbolize? You know? Why do we light wax candles again? Besides to enlighten so people can see. There's no electricity. Why do we light candles? What's the meaning behind a candle?
It sacrifices itself to give light.
Sacrifices itself to give light, right? It's melting, right? For the sake of continuing to light. It's offering itself. That's how a servant should be. This was a constant reminder of liturgical prayers, right? But this wax also has a practical aspect that it melts and it falls on the ground and needs to be cleaned up, right? The subdeacons are responsible for that. Now there's oil candles, right? A lot easier. But again, who's responsible for that? Who's doing that? Shouldn't just be 1 or 2 deacons in the entire church. Subdeacons should know. Soot used to be created in the ceilings. If you go to the ancient churches, there's soot, they're black. Yeah, now they've been cleaned up in many of the churches, but yeah, there's just black soot on top. What's that coming from? From the candles. Who's responsible for cleaning that? Subdeacons, right? So I'm pointing this out for cleanliness. The cleanliness of the altar and the holy space is the responsibility of subdeacons, right? The cleanliness of the church, it's a blessing, it's an honor to be able to clean up the dust from these benches. Because it's God's house. It's God's house. On the side, again, when it comes to lighting candles, how do you light a candle? Sounds like a very simple question. How do you light a candle? Someone explain to me. How do you light a candle?
And the candle on the altar?
And if you know the answers from last time, don't say it. So Dr. Mary, you can answer any more questions. You light a candle from a candle that's lit already. This also has symbolism. It doesn't lose anything, right? And there's no reason for you to keep on clicking with the letter and nothing's happening. It's just a distraction, right? And it's not going to work. So even when you're lighting a charcoal, the ideal way to light a charcoal that we learned, right? You light a candle that's stationary, that's standing in some holder. You have another candle, you light it, you take the coal with the tongs, and you put it. And you keep on going like this. And if one of them goes out because of the flickering of the coal, then you have the other one to light it. And you have 2 flames. What's going to be stronger? The flame, you don't need this torch thing came from the monastery. I'm telling you, the torch thing came, I don't know if you have a torch here or not. Again, the little torch thing came from the monastery. You don't need to use a torch. 2 candles, right? And you don't need to use a lighter after this. There's a tradition that I don't know if we ever had in our church or not, that at the bosom of the Father, in front of the bosom of the Father, there will always be a lit lamp, right? And it's ever burning. And the subdeacons would be responsible for the lights, right? So whenever the church services start, they would take from that light that's continuously lit and take and light the altar candles and then continue to light whatever else needs to be lit, right? Historically, lighting a candle was a very mystical moment. It was a very mysterious moment because it's dispersing the darkness. Darkness is present, there's no electricity. Remember, there's no electricity. It's dispersing the darkness. It's a moment of holiness. It's a moment in which God is making him, he is the true light that disperses the darkness. And the darkness could not comprehend it. Right? The other thing that was talked about in the prayers for the subdeaconate, since therefore you have been trusted to touch that which is holy, the holy liturgical vessels. Right? Cleaning and preparing the altar space, we mentioned. So we said lighting the lamps, cleaning and preparing the altar space. Number 3, taking care of the censer, making sure it's pure and it's ready. Not just that there's a coal lit inside of it, right? Many times we receive the censer and the censer is not lit. We have to wait, and I think this happened during ordination prayers, if I'm not mistaken. We have to wait until there's another coal that's being put in. And at the end, many times we see Abuna himself going and lighting the coal and then bringing it. Who's responsible for that? The subdeacons. Charcoal overflow was a messy responsibility back in the day. So again, the cleanliness of the altar. The censer symbolizes the womb of St. Mary, symbolizes St. Mary herself. Who's going to polish the censer? It's not just at feast times. Every liturgy is union with God. It's a time of prayer. So who's going to be responsible for polishing the censer? Sometimes there's one or two people in the whole church congregation that do this. Again, who's going to learn how to do it so that it needs to be done? We know how to pass this down. Right? Number 4, taking care and preparing the oblations. Who's making the orban? Right? Who's responsible for bringing the orban to the church? Who's responsible for making sure that the oblation basket is clean and doesn't have a lot of extra flour in it that turns into, unfortunately, mold and looks horrible and unpresentable to the Lord? Right? These are the responsibilities of the subdeacon. In Canon 34 of St. Athanasius, probably St. Athanasius II, the second patriarch, not Basil, he says, "It is not permitted unto a priest to go out on account of the bread of offering and to stand at the oven. But as he serves the people, so shall the subdeacon serve him. For the prophet Ezekiel says, whoever serves, he shall be served." So it's saying that the priest should not leave the church to do these things. The subdeacon should be doing it because he's responsible for serving alongside the priest. Number 5, in terms of order in the sanctuary or in the church before the services, taking care of the liturgical vessels, right? To make sure that they're present for the liturgy. Of course, at the end of the liturgy, that's what this means. To touch that which is holy, the holy liturgical vessels. Not to touch them with your hands, but to touch them even with the feather. And there's documents that say even in the 6th century, right, there's a reference to the priest. If you notice, when the priest is distributing the blood, right, he's holding a lefefa in his hand, in his left hand, right? And then he's holding the chalice. Does the priest have the ability to hold the chalice? Yes. He holds the spoon with his hand. He doesn't hold the lefefa. So he can. But out of propriety, out of reverence, out of honor to that which he is holding, he still holds the lefefa. Right? So this is to hold the liturgical vessels with the lefefa. Number 6 is taking care of liturgical vestments, right? Abuna is liturgical vestments, right? Abuna doesn't need to be responsible for his own liturgical vestments. Who's preparing them for him, having them ready? It's a feast coming up. Everything is ready, right? The diaconate is responsible for these things. Let's look at our own tunias and our own batrashés. Many times we have people coming up and it's just a mess. They're just coming up with a clump of clothes, right? We ourselves need to fold them properly, and many people iron them, and they're presentable, right? If we see when people are about to have the tunia blessed, you see a little deacon next to you that has a mess of a tunia, take it, tell him, you fold it nice. You fold it for him, teach him how to fold it, and then you have him ready so when it comes around, he knows it's presentable, right? And the 2 ways that we learn to present it is either it's folded in our hands or it's draped over our arm, right? Number 7, taking care of the water basin and the towels. When we use things in the church like towels, we don't wash them in the washing machine. They need to be washed just like the water for the baptismal font, right? After the baptism, it doesn't just go into, God forbid, the sewer. It's holy water. It has holy maroon in it, right? And it was the water by which people were becoming baptized, children of God, right? Yes, we pray a prayer afterwards so that it would return to its natural form, but it's still used for holy purposes. So these things get washed by hand, right? They get washed. There's maroon on the towels that are used in the baptismal prayers, right? Who is responsible for washing them? The subdeacons. Who is responsible for taking care of the towels? Sometimes, because liturgies are prayed often, we find that the towel that we're drying our hand on is wet. The first time we're washing our hands in the service, it's wet. Normally it's wet because it's been wet for the past couple of days. Right? Who's responsible for that? The subdeacons. When it comes to the water basin in the Saint Cyril liturgy, the time in which the subdeacons, they're supposed to bring the basin at the altar. I don't know if this happened in other liturgies in the past, but until now we have it in the Saint Cyril liturgy. Where one is not going, he's not moving from the altar, but he's washing his hands at the altar. He's just turning to the left and he's washing his hands, and then continuing the liturgy, right? And that brings up the idea that we're supposed to know liturgical prayers, which is part of what the subdeacon exam is about, the liturgical rites. We'll mention that. Number 8, taking care of the altar curtains, the altar linens, the altar covers. So the altar linens and covers, right, these likewise need to be washed, but they're washed also in a place where the water doesn't go to the sewer. Who's responsible for this? On holy days that are very long, like during Vesper week, right? Think of Palm Sunday. Think of preparing for Palm Sunday, from Lazarus Saturday to Palm Sunday. Think of Great Friday until Bright Saturday, right? Changing all of the linens of the church, preparing them, storing them, making sure that they're ironed and presentable, right? If they're messed up, then producing new ones, and responsible for all of that, right? Who's responsible for that? The subdeacons. It shouldn't just be 1 or 2 people in the church. I'm mentioning all of these examples. We should all be participating in some. I'm not saying one person, all of you are going to be doing all of these. But it's up to Abuna and the deacon coordinator to be able to distribute these things to you all who have been entrusted with this rank of the subdeacon. Mending and repairing them, storing them properly, so the money is not wasted. Ensuring those who donate, if you would actually be responsible for overseeing this, then you'd be responsible for ensuring who's donating what, right? That we don't just have an excess of nothing, again, for no reason. Sometimes we find in the churches, for example, during Vesper, there'd be a banner of Christ's face, but it's not Christ's face, it's an actor that acted Christ in a movie. We don't accept that. It's inappropriate. We don't use those in the churches, because that's a human being that acted in a movie. We don't use those things, right? We want something that is presentable, that is not an actual human being. Number 9, preparing the church for certain liturgical prayers, things like that end, Feast of the Cross, Palm Sunday, the basin, the candles, the icons, the gospel, the golden gospel, the banners, the mics, the iPads, everything to be prepared in its proper space. That's the responsibility of the subdeacons. Distribution of liturgical readings. During Vesper, there's many readings. During the Feast of the Cross, when you're going in the procession, there's many readings. It shouldn't just be on 1 or 2 people, right? Number 10, preparing, another aside, caveat. When we're doing the procession for the Feast of the Cross or for Palm Sunday, okay, there's a procession. The cross, I want you all to understand this. I'm not going to ask the question just for the sake of time. But there's a cross in the front, right? And then the deacons are the cross, all the deacons that are present in the church. And then the icon of the cross, or the cross that's being sensed, and then when it's sensing the cross. When it comes time to read the gospel, we have microphones now, I understand. You shouldn't be reading towards St. Mina. You're reading for the sake of the people. You face the people when you read, because they should be looking at you. And it's a very important principle. If you just, again, you remember this principle is one of the key principles. When we are doing things in the church, pretend that these devices are not present. Pretend that the screen doesn't exist. That you need to read in such a way, and you need to serve in such a way that if people would hear you, people would know what you're saying, and people would be able to do what you're saying. You're saying, let us attend. Okay, you're saying, pray for the Holy Gospel. They can hear you well, and they'll be able to pray for the Holy Gospel. Right? You see, pray for the Holy Gospel. Well, what is it? Let us attend. No. Nobody knows what's being said. And you're saying, let us attend. Right? To me, unfortunately, the first part of the Thanksgiving prayer, right? Most of the fathers, including myself many of the times, we say it in Coptic. So everyone is like in Barmak, right? To say prosopixaste. What's prosopixaste mean? Let us attend, right? Unfortunately, many people don't know what that means. They're just so used to saying prosopixaste, and they're not ready to actually say the English response to the Arabic response to the Arabic, right? But we want the people to attend. It's not wrong to say prosopixaste, especially if you're saying in Coptic. But saying English or Arabic, then say, let us attend. Nonsense, right? Whatever the Arabic translation is. Number 10 is preparation for church weddings, funerals, and baptisms. Who's the one for communicating with a wedding planner? Who's the one for communicating with a funeral parlor? It's the subdeacons. Subdeacons. Order in the church. They know they're going to bring the casket from here and out there, and then they're bringing the people there. They can organize the cars that are leaving the church, give them the funeral tags. It's the subdeacons. Who's responsible, number 11, for praying the baptisms, rites, and the funerals of the women? It shouldn't just be 1 or 2 or 3 deacons that are rotating, doing all the baptisms and doing all the funerals and doing all the weddings, right? And that means we have to know the rites of these prayers. We have to be prepared to pray them. We have to know when one is going to have the mic over here, one is going to have the mic next to the couple, so we can move the mic ahead of the time, not just last minute. We have to know ahead of time, so we can be prepared for everyone. We have to know that the vestments are going to be brought at a certain time, and we're ready to bring them, and we hold them over here, so that the people that are taking pictures are not going to keep on telling us to move. They can see the couple, and at the same time, Abuna can have them blessed. And I'm not blocking the altar as much as possible, so I'm holding them like this. Abuna can bless. Same thing with the crowns. And traditionally, the crowns are put in the shape of a cross. So there's a cross, again, you have one crown like this, and the other crowns like this. Who else, you think about it like this. Who else is supposed to know these rites and know these things if it's not the highest rank of the diaconate in the church? Right now in our diocese, that's the subdeacons. This is their responsibility. Many times in funerals and weddings and baptisms, there may be many people. Many times there's very little people. There's no one to even say the responses. Maybe some of you have attended such weddings and funerals. It's difficult for those couples, for those people. You shall perform those things which have been assigned to you. They are that you should follow after the deacon to assist him in the work of ministry as he follows after the presbyter. All these things that we're talking about, follow up with the woman. If you can participate in this, you want to learn the rights to these things, it would be nice if you start a class. What are the rights of baptism? What are the rights of liturgy? Raising one incense. How should I present the censer to a woman? Right? We're going to do that. The last section is order in the sanctuary itself, which is what sometimes we think is the main service. Certainly it's a very holy service, but I went over all that first because the subdeacons are responsible for the order in the church overall, not just for what's happening in the altar space or the sanctuary. Number 1 is propriety when serving in the sanctuary. Preparing the oblation. Sometimes we're waiting for the wine to be there. Who's pouring the wine and making sure that the wine is ready, making sure that the wine is good wine? Subdeacons. As we said, no one should be looking towards the west. No one needs to enter the sanctuary except for those who are serving in the sanctuary that day. You don't need to enter the sanctuary. It's not just we stand on the side and sit there. What about the rest of the congregation? Number 2, the deacon responses and the rites. When I remember there was a program growing up in which we learned the responses and the rites in such a way that we would be discouraged from using books. We were taught that traditionally there are no books in the altar. There are no books on the altar. You don't put anything on the altar. To the point where some fathers, I know a father, that he has his glasses case there, he doesn't remove it from the altar. Because what's on the altar is the altars. This is the way that they learn, that the altar is holy. We don't just lean on the altar, right? We don't put things on the altar and then remove them. So we were taught to memorize the responses. And again, you think about it as a member of the congregation. If you hear someone that is not able to find the page on the book where the response is, right? That's a distraction, right? But if you hear someone able to proclaim, pray for the salvation of the world, you're going to pray for the salvation of the world. You're going to pray for this city of ours. You're going to pray for Maitland, right? We're responsible for that. We were taught in the monastery, even if we're flipping pages of books, none of our books, let's say we're flipping the pages of the books for a woman. We know where we're going, so we're not concerned about doing it quickly. When you flip the page of a book, it makes a sound. We were taught you don't make a sound. When you flip the page of a book, it's the altar. It's a holy space, right? Using microphones properly, not going like this, which is obnoxious and unnecessary, and not going like this because the people can't hear you. Right? Sometimes we're not thinking about these things, but it's our responsibility to get used to them, to do them properly. There's no reason for gesturing or speaking across the altar, right? there's some sort of order. Every church can do it differently, right? You organize with the diaconate. But they know who's the order, or who's saying what responses, without me speaking, without me gesturing. The microphones are there, people know to use the microphones. You don't have to remind them, hold the microphone in your hand, bring it closer to your face, right? They can hear you. Same thing when it comes to the people reading the deacons reading the Agpeya prayers. You can't hear them. And even choosing, when we choose who these people will be, right? People that will be able to be heard, and people will be able to understand what they're reading. Knowing the rites, usually we're focusing on just St. Basil liturgy, because that's what we normally pray. But also on the feast days, people know the rites of the St. Gregory liturgy, the rites of St. Cyril liturgy. All this is material, like if we don't know this is all material that you can have at a deacon's meeting, and you continuously learn and focus on all these different points and all these different rites, and you can do it physically. If I were to do this physically, it would be like just more. Presenting the censer at the right time. For example, there's a time in the liturgy where Abuna is praying the 3 long litanies. And then he prays the litany of the fathers on the altar, and then he signs the people with the incense box, and then he signs the incense box and he puts a spoon of incense in the censer. The deacon should know to bring the censer at that time, right? That's not written in the book. Because maybe it's not an ancient rite, maybe it is an ancient rite, I don't know. But it's what we do, it's what we receive, so we do it, right? The deacon has to know that. He also has to know that after that, he's not putting the censer back. Why? Because just a few minutes afterwards, he's going to say litany to the assemblies. He's not going to have taken the censer. The censer is supposed to be standing there, or he's supposed to be holding the censer, not swinging it. Standing, waiting, right? And then he's not going to present it again for him to put incense, because he already put incense. He's just going to give it to him like this. And when he gives the censer to Abuna, he kisses the cross and he kisses Abuna's hand. And then Abuna senses with it, and then the deacon is ready to receive it back. Right? Many times the deacon just walks away. And Abuna's stuck there waiting for the censer. Either he's going to pray the prayers that he's supposed to be using the censer for without the censer, or he's going to wait, and then it's going to be distracted to the people. Another side note that I want you to realize, again, there are things that we don't do because we can't do what is easier. So for us to add these things would be difficult. When I was delivering the rites to the priests in the monastery, I asked Sayyidina about this, and he said, if we start doing it, the deacons will be confused. The people, they're not going to be able to do this. There's one cross for the service. There's one cross for the service. I mean, there's a cross on the altar. That is the one cross that's used for the deacon and for the priest. But for that to happen, that would mean there has to be good coordination. The deacons have to know everything that they're supposed to be doing, where they're supposed to leave the cross, and when it picks it up. Right? So, for example, in the procession, right? In the procession, you're holding the cross in the procession on the altar, right? Abuna, he's prayed the absolution prayers. He goes to the altar, he signs, and he puts the incense, and then he signs the people and says, peace be with you all. Then he gives the cross to the deacon. Most of you know, which I'm not telling you to change, just do as you've been doing. I'm not trying to confuse you, but I'm trying to tell you there's other things that we don't even talk about because we're not ready for them, right? It'll be too confusing. Then Abuna gives the cross to the deacon, and then he holds the cross, he continues the procession, right? On his last time when he's standing at the altar like this, and Abuna's gonna, next time he's gonna exit, he puts the cross on the altar, and he exits. Or he just goes to the side, whatever your order your standing is, right? Then Abuna takes the cross as he's exiting. That's what's supposed to happen, because there's one cross. It's a symbol of the one unity, right? There's one cross of blessing, it's the altar cross. In the exam for the subdeaconate, we have questions about knowing the rites of the Agpeya hours. Because if we don't know the rites of the Agpeya hours, we're going to start prayers, or we're going to prepare for prayers, and they're not being prayed. Or you're praying the 3rd, 6th, and 9th hours, you're praying the 3rd and 6th hours, you're praying the 3rd, 6th, 9th, 11th, and 12th hours. What are we praying? Right? Knowing this is the responsibility of the deacons. Knowing the rites of the litanies of raising of morning incense, so we can say the correct response. And so if someone knows that it's the litany of the oblations, like during the weekdays, you're praying the litany of the sick and the travelers, right? The deacon is standing behind the Abuna a little bit to the right and holding the cross and saying the responses from here, right? There's the litany of the oblations. Where is he? In the altar, right? He's in the altar, also holding the cross. and saying the response from inside the altar, right? And for Ashaya, he's outside here, the linear part. But if I don't know the linear relations is coming up, then I won't do that. I'm going to say the response from anywhere, right? Or I'm not going to go in immediately after I say the response of the sick, so I'm not going to be ready for the linear relation. I'm going to say it on the way in. Number 6, and lastly, knowing the general rites for the liturgical year. And I'm just conglomerating a bunch of different things here. Yeah, the Katamoros readings. Who's supposed to know which readings are read on which days? What if there's a feast day that falls on another day? Which readings do we read? Read the feast day readings or read the other ones? Sometimes read the feast day readings, sometimes read the regular readings. Who's supposed to know this? The reader should know this, which means the subdeacon should know that. Right? We shouldn't just be relying on Coptic reader. Right? All these things were delivered generation after generation, because these things didn't exist. To know which saint of the day is, it's not just looking up on a Coptic reader, right? We know it ahead of time, because we're planning for that occasion. We're saying that veneration, we're saying that in the Brisbane, right? The days of the Paramon. These are things that are also in the subdeacon exam. It's for this purpose, because who's gonna know these things and deliver them? Fasting days, what changes? And the psalmody, what changes? The tunes that are used, what changes? What's said, what's not said? These are all things that are the responsibility of the subdeacon. So we spoke about a lot. This is to open many doors, many ideas as to what the subdeacon should be doing, or trained to do, or participating in doing. Not that all of you are going to do all of them, but to be exposed to more of them, right? Be exposed to serving in more of them. Let me just finish. With all of these things, at the minimum, if you ordained a subdeacon, you should be attending. You shouldn't be just attending Vespers and midnight praises when you have service. You should be attending Vespers and midnight praises every single week as a faithful Christian, not as a subdeacon. Vespers and midnight praises, right? Liturgy on Sunday. If you have some extenuating circumstance, some exceptional situation in which your work does not allow you to do so. I was just speaking to a man Monday, and he kept on insisting with his job, he cannot work on Sunday, he cannot work on Sunday, he cannot work on Sunday. He's working as a pharmacist. It's a dignified job, it's a professional job. He cannot work on Sunday. He kept on working with them, and they said they were going to give him the days off. He said, I can get you letters from my priests, I can get you verification that I'm where I am on Sunday morning. He kept on working with them, they wouldn't allow him to, and they said basically, I'm sorry, we can't let you not work on Sundays, we need you to work on Sundays. I'm sorry, I have to work this job this evening. You got another job, God bless you. People, until now, realize the responsibility that they have. He's not a subdeacon. He's just congregating, right? He's just a faithful man. He's a young man. He just finished graduate school. So attending, and if we're again, this is the flexibility or the mercy of the church is to say, at least you need to be attending regularly. It's part of the requirements to be ordained, to be attending 80%. This is for the chanter. For the chanter. Not for the subdeacon. For the chanter, for the reader, and the subdeacon. Yes, sir.
Yes, I was just wondering if, basically the subdeacon is going to be doing everything. What about the other ranks? What are they doing? When there wasn't any subdeacons, we used to serve an altar, and I personally used to love it. Now I've been 2 years, I haven't done that, and I'm really sad about it. But it's just the way it is right now, and what's the other ranks do? They just stand there and that's it.
No.
I mean,
Many of the things
everything is upon the subdeacons.
No. Many of the things that I mentioned could also be done, and even caveated sometimes that the readers do this, the readers do this, readers do this, because, again, I think everybody that's ordained as subdeacon in our diocese has been a reader prior. So I'm mentioning that readers, for example, readers, all the services of the church, it's a requirement for the reader to be a servant in the church. Sunday school, hymns meetings, Bible studies, retreats, spiritual days, all this is the responsibility of the reader. These are real responsibilities. And let us not belittle, again, even St. Paul talks about it in 1 Corinthians 14, I believe. And he's saying when they hear the people of God, when someone enters the church, they hear them responding and worshiping God, they will say, God is in this place. So the reverence that we have when we're praying liturgical prayers and knowing the responses, knowing the liturgical seasons, being able to serve in these capacities, serve the children that are around us, teach them these things. This is a huge service. This is a very wide and so many avenues of service just exist in this. But because of the way that we have the church now, I would say that all these things also can be served by others. And unfortunately, I say unfortunately because I wish that we would bring the revival to the subdeacons doing these things, right? At least overseeing these things, and serving in them in some capacities. But these services are all being done by laymen. The majority of these things are being done by laymen. So at least, let us participate in them until we can come to a point where people are not consecrated, like you don't have your own professional job, but you're consecrated in such a way that you feel responsible. You're reliable in these things that one doesn't have to think about, doesn't have to worry about it, be concerned about it. But all these things are being done by laymen, not just by chanters, readers, subdeacons. Of course, except for the Urban spheres, within the chanter. I spoke about a lot. I'll just mention them quickly again. We spoke about the rites of ordination and the prayers that are similar to the prayers of the diaconate, the full deacon, what we call the full deacon, the priest and the bishop. We talked about the responsibility being primarily order and organization. 5 things concerning order, concerning the people. Number 1, knowing the people, the welcoming community aspect. The ushers, ensuring propriety. Number 3, appropriate dress. Remember the clothes, what do they represent, and how are they preparing us, our minds, to be able to serve, and to be present and pray. Number 4, organizing the people for receiving the Eucharist, or if they're not going to receive the Eucharist and they know ahead of time, they shouldn't be embarrassed when they come up for the altar, and bringing them up for the blessed bread and letting Abuna know this a newcomer is a visitor to the church. It's the responsibility of the subdeacon. Number 5, serving the younger deacons and being an example to them. The second portion was order in the church and sanctuary outside of the service times, in preparation for the service times. We talked about lighting the candles, we talked about cleaning, preparing the altar space, taking care of the censer, taking care of preparing the oblations, the bread, taking care of the liturgical vessels, cleaning them, making sure they're well kept, they're in order. Number 6, taking care of the liturgical vestments of Abuna, of our own. Number 7, taking care of the water basin and the towels. Number 8, taking care of the altar curtains, the altar linens, the altar cover. Number 9, preparing the church for certain liturgical prayers like the Anne, the Feast of the Cross, the Palm Sunday, the basin, candles, the procession crosses, the icons, all these things prepared. Number 10, preparing the church for weddings, funerals, and baptisms, arranging the church, arranging with the wedding planner, with the funeral parlor. Number 11 is actually serving these capacities, knowing the rites to these prayers and being present. Shouldn't just be 1 or 2 or 3 deacons that are doing this for the Abuna. And all this was summarized in the catechesis to say, you shall perform those things which have been assigned to you. They are that you should follow after the deacon to assist him in the work of ministry, as he follows after the presbyter, whatever the presbyter is in need. And the last section was order in the sanctuary during the services, the altar service. And number 1 is propriety in the sanctuary, so the reverence and respect and the holiness of the sanctuary. Everyone knows what they're doing, the oblations are prepared, there's no reason to look towards the west. No one should be in the sanctuary except for those who are serving on that day. Number 2, deacon responses and rites. Being able to know the rites of the church so that you're prepared to do them ahead of time, not when it tells you to do them, when the deacon tells you to do them, not needing to speak in the altar or pass the mic around, and using the mic properly, knowing the rites of the 3 liturgies. Number 3, the censer, presenting the censer at the right time and the right manner. Number 4, the rites of the Agbeya hours, knowing what the Agbeya hours are. Number 5, knowing the rites for the litanies of the raising of morning and evening incense. And number 6, knowing the general rites for the liturgical year, things like the Kataharos readings, the days of the Ramon, fasting days, the psalmody changes, the tunes of the church. These are all big responsibilities, and the order in the church is, number 1, God is a God of order. He is the one that created these ministries. He gave grace to the church that it would develop these ministries over time, so that when people enter into the church, it's the house of God, it's a place of reverence. How is that reverence being created? Part of it is this order, is the cleanliness of the place, is the piety of the people that know that they're coming to their seats in peace, right? That there's no children running around, that there's no children up there being a distraction to people, right? This is all creating reverence. It's creating the ability for people to not be distracted. If someone distracts themselves, that's on them. But I don't want to participate in that. I want to be responsible before God for their distraction. It's a big responsibility, but it's also a grace from God. It's a gift to be able to serve in this capacity, because like we said, the Lord Jesus Christ, He is the one who fulfilled this role when He cleared the temple and money changers, and He is the one who wants His house, His Father's house, to be a house of prayer. And that's what the subdeacons create when they're upholding the order in the church. May God grant us not only as subdeacons, but as a bishop for myself, to be faithful to the responsibilities we've been given by the church and by God Himself, and be faithful to the prayers that people prayed over us one day, that we will be filled with God's Holy Spirit to be able to fulfill these responsibilities. And if you're not ordained to subdeacon, again, or if you are, and you review, do I go to my father confession regularly and faithfully? Do I recognize these different aspects of the service? Is there something I can talk to my spiritual father about, or the father of the church, deacon coordinator, about to participate in some of these matters? Examine that. Doesn't mean you're going to do everything, and you don't take it upon yourself to do these things, but you ask for a blessing to participate. May God bless you all, and to Him be the glory.
Anybody has any questions? Please feel free to talk to us.
I have one question.
Yeah.
About the children thing in the front. I mean, it doesn't necessarily apply to me because I don't have a young boy, but I always imagined if I did, I would want, even before he became an absolutus, like, because I know you have to kind of be at a specific age and level of cognitive ability to become an absolutus, but I always imagined I would want my boy to be up there with me so I can immerse him from a young age in the passion that I have for the diaconate. And I understand, like, I totally understand the concept that you're saying, that like it's often a distraction in most cases, but I mean, for me, my imagination was like I would try to have a well-behaved boy who is not causing a distraction, and therefore get him immersed and passionate about the same passion that I have, sort of indoctrinate him from a young age so that he can grow up to, by the time he becomes an absolutus, he already loves it so much. And I don't know if there's merit to that idea, or if that's incorrect.
I commend you and any father that wants to deliver that spirit to their children. I want to make sure that that's clearly said. I know that the intention is good and pure, and I want my son to know these things and to participate in these things. But why is there a blessing for someone to dress in Antonia? Like, if the people that are here are standing here, like if you saw a man dressed in a suit, right, and they came in and stood here, you would say they should be there. What is the reason why he should be here? What's the reason? It's not because he's not being reverent, it's not because he's not being well behaved, it's not because he's not saying the responses, because that's not his place. So it's not to take away from the faithfulness as a father, but it's to create the longing, and there be a creating of longing for this. And your son or anyone else's son would see that there's times in which daddy serves as a deacon, there's time and mommy's taking care of us, or someone else is taking care of us. Give uncle and they would also participate. And even if, sometimes when I see the little children in the liturgy, participating in the liturgy, they're very cute. And I love children, I love them. But it's not their place. Like, I saw a child, it's not just in this church, but I see it often, unfortunately, in this church, right? So, I saw one of the deacon leaders, and in smaller churches, sometimes we say, okay, with the exception, with Abuna, with the understanding of Abuna, there's nobody else in the congregation. It's literally a small congregation of 30, 40 families, right? And this is the only person that can lead the liturgical prayers. And they have 3 children, right? It's not that we're saying it's a sin to do so. What we're saying is that it's a distraction to the people. Even if the child is good, the child is well behaved. The other thing is that, what about the children that don't have a father that's a deacon? And does this mean that we should create a system for those who they don't have a father that's a deacon, and then they should all be up there to encourage them? I have no problem with there being a system where, and some churches have done this, but they have the children, and there's deacons, let's say subdeacons, on the end and the middle of the rows, and they have the children there in the front, and they're saying the hymns, they're praising the hymns, right? that can be encouraged, that can happen, but not up there. And there needs to be some protocol and some rules. Like, it can't just be someone's coming in the middle of the liturgy and they're going to stand in the front. It's going to be a distraction, right? So, it's a matter of the distraction and a matter of, like, the reverence for the place. It's not because the children are doing something necessarily wrong, and they're naturally going to look around and look cute. Yes.
So kind of a follow-up to that. Some of us made interesting life choices where we have more than 2 kids, and we don't live around family. And so, like, for the sake of peaceful marriage, we choose to take some of those younglings with us. Like, would it be acceptable to kind of be off on the side, like, or in the like, and we still continue to serve? Because potentially you may not serve for like 3 or 4 years until they become of age.
So I understand the dilemma, and again, that's why I commend the fathers that want to be responsible as deacons and as fathers, of course. What some have done is they create a system with their wives, and especially if there's 3 children, right? And once a month, in which they have service, whether it's because they have assigned service or in general. Let's say the rotation of them serving as a subdeacon in terms of serving an altar in some capacity is once every 2 months or something. So still, once a month, we'll still have them. They're going to stand there with the deacons, and there'll be some sort of arrangement, whether the wife's friend or they're standing next to other family friends that will help take care of it, and there's preparation for that. So it's not just all of a sudden, it's not just every week, and the wife also is able to pray. And in other weeks, you're standing with the congregation and you're participating, you're teaching. Part of what unfortunately is not delivered to the children, I know I'm in a meeting with deacons for subdeacon, but part of what's not delivered to the children is how to be a faithful Christian when you're standing in liturgy, just as a faithful Christian, not as a deacon, just to stand in the congregation and participate. And many times you may have heard me say in retreats and in meetings like this, I pray that the generations now will produce the gittos and the tetas that are just standing in their own spot, like they have their same spot that they come to every single time, and they're praying. Their grandson, their granddaughter brings them to their chair. They're sitting there all liturgy long, participating very calmly and peacefully in the prayers. Or the gitto that's standing up in his suit, or the gitto that's wearing his sunya, but they're standing there, he's been there for years, right? Very calm, very simple, not outspoken, not leading, but he's there, he's present, right? Someone asks him to do something, he's aware, he knows how to do it, he's happy to encourage little children. The teachers, this is what we need. So this is something that, don't belittle the times where you're not just as a deacon and you're with your children. You can also deliver to them how to act in the liturgy in that manner. That's my treatment for the matter. And definitely be faithful to your wife, and happy wife, happy life. And be faithful to your children. But when we're girded for service, I think of it as a priest, right? Priest doesn't really have an option, right? He's going to be at the altar. He's not going to say anything, my child at the altar. And so, when we realize that this is what's required of us in our job, then we do. Like, for example, in these cases, there's some situation that has been arranged for the children during the work week. Doesn't mean that it's an ideal situation. You wish you were there with your child. But there's other things that we arrange when we know that we can't be there physically with ourselves or our wives. Yes?
It's the same thing. يفتقد لكن الرجالة في حتة and the ladies. So if we stay as a family, we cannot do that either.
In the church, there's, from at least the 4th century, and of course from Jewish times as well, there's the men's quarters and the women's quarters. The men's section and women's section. In most of the churches, what they've done is that if someone's going to stand as a family with their children, they've dedicated the last 2 or 3 rows because they have children that maybe they're going to need at some point to exit the church because they're anxious. They want to move. They want to take a walk. Just take them for a walk, bring them to the client, and then come back. So, if that's going to happen, it will be the last 2 or 3 rows, whatever the church designates. But it shouldn't be that in the middle of the congregation there are these situations happening. And no women should be in the front here, nor should men be over there. And again, that's part of what the subdeacon should be organizing and from when they're coming in. And they shouldn't be facing that situation where someone's going to be told, please move from here to here. They're simply being guided. And think of an usher when you go to some event. They may guide you to sit like when you just had the play. If there were ushers there and saying, sit here and sit there and chat, even if someone asks, like, can I sit over there? Please, if you can sit. These things we apply in other circumstances. I understand the value behind standing as a family, but it's not, I want also to make it clear that it's not, we've had many generations of where we've been raised. This was not a question previously. It's only a common question in our modern generation because we see, I believe it's because whether we ourselves see or others before us have seen Protestant churches in which they've done away with this. But there are many Protestant churches in which uphold this. And if you look up separate seating in churches, you'll find websites of Protestant churches that explain the reasons why they have this, and they uphold it. And they're not Apostolic churches, they're not Orthodox churches, they're Catholic churches. So it's something that we've received over the centuries.
Also during COVID, they made everyone say what their families.
Yeah, I was gonna say because COVID.
Yeah. So that's something else that happens because of COVID, and they made this exception in the church. And again, there's a difference between us saying this is a sin, it should not be done, it's horrible, versus we're saying there's order in the church. That's why I'm using the word propriety. Propriety is not a word that's commonly used anymore, but it's conforming to that what's the norm in this capacity. What's the norm at on a sports field is different from what the norm is on a beach, it's different from what the norm is in a church, at a funeral, at a wedding, at a restaurant. So that's what the norm is in the church. And of course, I'm not getting into details, but obviously, when a woman stands in the midst of the men, then she's not everyone's sister, she's not everyone's mother, she's not everyone's daughter, right? And when the men stand on the women's side, that's not everyone's father or brother or son. Yes, son.
You were talking earlier about like a big part of subdeaconship is learning the rites, the movements, the readings, the tones. And that's something I've kind of learned over the years as like through practice. But is there a good starting point to review all of that, whether in a book or something, that way you actually know everything that is to come with it and to kind of keep that in mind? Or is it just through more practice and speaking with the elders?
Certainly, number one would be just regular prayer and attendance, and you learn naturally. But what's supposed to happen is that prior to any ordinations, you're being taught this. There's classes and there's preparation for whatever rank we're doing or we're entering into. And so there can be classes prepared, and the main source is the liturgical books. And the liturgical books themselves have the rubrics. So if you go into Coptic Reader and you open up the rubrics, you'll see that it has here the rubrics now. I'll sing under. I'm sure you're aware of this. Maybe some of you now. If you go to silent prayers and comments. Thank you. So silent prayers are the silent prayers of the priest, and you may need to open that up because sometimes when he's doing, for example, the Pauline circuit after the absolution of the ministers, those prayers are they're silent. So you're not going to see that you need to prepare the incense, the censer, the incense box before. But then you'll see all these yellow comments, signs, forehead, like I was saying, with your thumb. These are comments for the bishop himself. That's the primary place where you'll find it. And the deacon has to learn what it is that this means for him. Meaning what? Meaning if it says that Abuna puts a spoon of incense, it's not going to say the deacon needs to get the censer. It's going to say Abuna puts a spoon of incense, so the deacon has to prepare that. The gospel's being read. It doesn't say you light the candles, right? But you know the gospel's being read, therefore you have to light the candles, right? You have to have it prepared ahead of time. Communion is about to begin, and so we need to set up the tables wherever they're going to be. And likewise, if we focus on that for a period of time, truly, I wish that we would, for Abuna's sake, number one, and for the congregation's sake, number two, again, imagine the reverence. I was praying in a church recently, and may God bless them, in Thanksgiving have pious people, and through Sayyidina's leadership and leadership of the fathers, they've received a lot, right? But it's a beautiful thing to see the congregation bowing and making the sign of the cross. They're aware of the presence of God, or at least they are doing the actions to make themselves aware of the presence of God, right? This is what we need to see. I recall, and I've said this before, I recall a deacon reading in the church during the wedding, the Pauline epistle. I was distributing the prayers to the priests, because there was many priests that were there. And because of the way that he was reading with authority, I couldn't focus. I couldn't focus on distributing the prayers to the priests, because he was reading with such authority. Paul, the servant of our Lord Jesus Christ, called to be an apostle, appointed to the gospel of God. Read with authority. Paul, the apostle of Jesus Christ, called to the gospel. No, it's not beneficial. Why is there a rank of reader? Why is there a rank of subdeacon? Read with authority. That's your responsibility. Part of the responsibilities of the reader is to memorize. I'm saying this because you're subdeacon, so at one point you were readers already in our diocese. To memorize the introduction and the conclusion. To be familiar with what you're reading so you can make eye contact. Right? Like, you shouldn't just be looking and staring, right? You shouldn't just be having to and by the way, and because you have the Catemoris, read from the books. I know that many times the readings may be different. Right? The psalm will be a little bit different. Read from the books. Even if the psalm's a little different, read from the books. The books are more correct than Coptic reading. And Satan Yusuf says this, right? Because Coptic readers are taking from the New King James. It's not taking from the Catemoris.
I think it's a lot of things are learned by observation. I've never sat in a class to be taught the responses. It's by observation and using my senses. When I hear, when I listen, I make the difference between the litany response in the morning raising of incense and at the end of the liturgy. By observation or by listening, I know the ending is different. By observation, when I see the deacon is bringing the Shuria, I can link between bringing the Shuria and the reading in the liturgy. By observation, I learned that this is a time when I bring the Shuria. And I learned by observation when Abuna Masalan corrects someone. So when someone is corrected by Abuna Masalan to do something, I keep it. For example, I keep correcting readings many times. It is corrected all the time. And when it should be when it is corrected once, the rest of the deacons would understand that this word should be pronounced this way, not that way. So, I mean, sometimes we just forget what's happening around us. Maybe we come to the church every week, but we are not observing, we're not linking between what we see and what we learn. So that's the best way to learn something. Even in the hymns, when I know a hymn, for example, and I know a response, for example, when I say even Lord have mercy, but there are different ways of saying Lord have mercy. So if I'm singing beside Mary, for example, and I find myself off, then I know there is something wrong here, so I need to review myself and change that. But if I don't do that, I'm going to keep doing what is wrong, what I've learned, and I think what I've learned is what it is. So all the time we learn. Until now, I learned a lot of things from Sayyidina during the liturgy, and I learned a lot of things from other priests. So that's life. Life of the deacon should be by observation. If you don't use your senses, you're not going to grow what you learn. No matter what it is written in the book, you can read it in the book, but when you come to apply, you forget.
Sayyidina, I have a question about correcting others for reading.
But I agree very much with what Abuna is saying. We will learn by paying attention. But that means what's assumed in what Abuna is saying is that we know it's our responsibility to know these things, and not just to know them on a mental level, which is what you can get from the book, but to be able to be ready to do them. To be ready and present and willing and able to do them. Right? So, part of what we're doing, we're opening our eyes to all these responsibilities, and that all these intricacies of liturgical prayers are the responsibility of the diaconate, and this is the highest rank of the diaconate in the diocese. Yes?
someone is reading something wrong, especially like in the Holy Week, who's responsible to correct that? And if you heard it and the one that's responsible didn't do anything or just like didn't notice it, so who should do it or?
Number one, again, if Abuna hears it, if Abuna is present and he's able to pay attention to it, Abuna can correct it. Or if he's appointed someone to be responsible for this. Certainly, I don't want to say that everyone should be doing it. There's a pious way to do so, and there's a very unpious way to say it kindly and to do so. So we want the readings to be read correctly. That's part of that is preparing the readings, and in many of the churches they have an order. I don't know if here, I think I asked this, I remember. You have an order of the readings? Like who's reading what on Sundays? Distributed. Okay. And so if you know ahead of time, you're reading the Pauline epistle, then the day before, the night before, you read it, and if you don't know how to pronounce a certain word or a certain name, you listen to it audio, it's free online, listen to the audio book, and learn how to pronounce this word or this name, and you're prepared to say it. Same thing with the Vespa readings, If there's many readings in the Vespa, so there will be things that will happen in mistakes, but usually they distribute Maitland for the whole entire night, and people know they're going to read this exposition, this prayer. You don't know, you're not sure. Ask the person next to you. But who's responsible for correctly? Abuna or whoever Abuna appoints. Abuna or whoever Abuna appoints.
I think loudly in Sayyidina, it should not be encouraged for anyone to correct someone loudly.
Yeah, sorry.
Because it will disturb the whole thing.
Certainly, nobody should.
It has to be either for Abuna, and actually for me, for example, I don't correct every word. There are words that you need to let go, but there are words that can change the meaning.
Yeah.
This is when you have to correct it on the spot.
Correct.
And a lot of time, I take the person on the side. After he finishes reading, I talk to him, watch these words, change that in the future, make sure that you change. Because sometimes when you correct, if someone comes out and he doesn't know how to read, then in every sentence there is a word to be corrected.
Mm-hmm.
And it will end up that you're going to correct every word, but this would be very disturbing.
Exactly.
Disturbing to the prayers, disturbing to the people.
Exactly. I mean, the correction is so that the people are not distracted by the wrong understanding and so they get the right message. So if our correction is going to create a further distraction, then we don't do it. And maybe some of you have experienced when you're reading the readings, afterwards, when you're reading and you're supposed to do a prostration before the altar, before you go and read the readings, and then you're supposed to do a prostration afterwards, right? And take everyone's blessing. When people come to me after they're done reading the readings, take the blessing, I hold your hand for a second. Let's say I'm doing something, I'm saying a response, I'm finishing a prayer, right? And I let you know this word, Maitland, and propriety, propitiation, right? Immortality, perfect, not perfect, right? I'm letting you know what it is that was said improperly or the grammar behind it or something. So I agree with the booking afterwards. And only if you know the person well, right, and you can let them know. If you know the person well personally, and you're trying to do something, let them know something's not wrong, it's wrong. But if it's not, if it's someone that you know, then it's not your responsibility. Let the people, whether one or another, one appoints to be responsible for this act.
We know that this happened only on the Holy Week because of the readings a lot. But before during the liturgy, we always distribute the readings. We try to take the right because it's not good to come just say the word of God in a different meaning. So most of the time it's in the Holy Week we see it more.
Yeah, when there's lots of people.
Lots of readings.
Actually, this problem is more in Arabic than in English.
You're right.
Yeah, no, it's
A lot more in Arabic than a lot than in
Yeah.
English.
I guess that's key,
It's not passing in English, we're
You're catching it in English, I'm catching it in Arabic.
catch a lot of this.
A common one, I'll say this because I've heard it, when people that English is not their first language, learn English, they're taught about conjunctions, right? So conjunction is do not turns into don't, cannot turns into can't, right? When you're reading something formally, you don't use conjunctions, right? You say do not. Do not take away your mercy, right? Not don't take away your mercy. When you're formal, when you're reverent, you're reading it in that pocket. So this is something that was learned in English schools, right? But when you're reading in the church, you say do not. If you're doing it in like a casual setting and reading something, then saying don't would show that you know the language well, right? But in a formal setting like the church, then you're reading do not or cannot or would not. Yes.
Back to موضوع الأطفال. No, that's okay.
Yeah.
Back to موضوع الأطفال يعني.
Yeah.
And number one, I feel the point that has been raised because of me. يعني I feel that I started.
It's not just you.
Yeah.
It's not just you. There's many,
I
unfortunately.
understand. That's يعني just.
All our kids run to us.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
All our kids. Yeah.
That's
بس يعني I want to say three points. Number one, يعني أنا جاي من كنيسة الملاك ميخائيل بتصل في شبرا اللي كان فيها وكيل البطريركية في عصر البابا كرولوس وعصر البابا شنودة أبونا مرقس غالي. ده كان عنده 5 أولاد ومن ساعة ما اتولدوا هم جنبيه في الهيكل من قبل يبقوا شمس. ده اللي أنا شفته. أبونا مكاري عبد الله تلميذ البابا كرولوس نفس الكلام، عنده 3 أولاد من قبل ما يترشوا شمامسة كانوا جنبيه في الهيكل. اتربيت وتعلمت ان ابونا مرقس غالي وابونا مكاري عبد الله مسكوا الميكروفون كل اسبوع وقالوا كل اب معاه الطفل بتاعه جنبه لو شماس طفل جنبه. ده اللي انا اتربيت عليه. I'm not saying ان سيدنا انت بتقوله غلط او صح، انا بس بقول my background. ده number one. Number two, انا عارف a lot of يعني of men ما كانوش deacons بس because ولادهم كانوا شايفين ابني جنبي وولادهم زنوا عليهم ان هم عايزين يبقوا زي ابني بقوا حفظوا الحان وبقوا شمامسه. I'm not trying to convince you to change what you're saying. بس أنا بقول my background, what I'm coming from. Number 3, distraction. In my opinion, if we talk about distraction, which is absolutely, I agree with you. But now, I feel that شوية لو حد بيتكلم جنبي بيصلي بصوت عالي, I know that this is distraction. وشوية we're going to be like machines in the church. You don't do this, you only do that. Otherwise, you're distracting me. You're not allowing me to pray. That's my, يعني I understand what you're saying, Sayyid. But I feel that sometimes we have to put like a line between distractions and we have to do this to be able to gain or to come to our target, our الهدف بتاعنا. Last thing. المسيح ذات نفسه اكيد سيدنا انت عارف انه ما رفضش الاطفال، قال لهم دع الاولاد ياتون الي. مظبوط. المسيح هو قدس الاقداس وانتهر التلاميذ. ممكن التلاميذ كان عندهم بوينت ان هو ايه you're distracting us. Again, I'm not trying to change what you're saying. But this is my understanding and this is what I'm coming from.
No way, I'm not going to
Yes, sure. I understand. I totally understand.
I respect you. I respect everything you're saying.
But this is not what I received. No, this is not what I saw. And even حتى أبونا أشعياء أنا فاكره كويس. كنت ساعات ديفيد بيجي وهو صغير كان بيقول لي سيبه. لأن هو حكى لي وهو صغير كان مع بابا كرولوس من قبل ما يبقى شماس. بابا كرولوس كان بيركبه معاه في العربية. وحكى لي كتير. For the sake of الطاعة I totally obey. بس أنا بقول what I'm coming from, the history that I already know, and this is something to me it's new. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, it's for the sake of organization, and I would obey. I just wanted to say that.
I thank you for making these points. I want to reiterate, it's not about you as a person. It's about many people, and I see this in other churches, but I see it happening here a lot. And that's why I made it a point to say this point, to mention this, because it shouldn't be so. And I'm saying it shouldn't be so, not as a disrespect of saying that school of thought is inappropriate. Again, I said it's not a sin. It's not a matter of a sin. And I differentiated between something that is order and propriety and a matter of distraction and who's going to make a decision of who's standing here or not. I'm not making a decision for myself. This is just the order of the church. Why is there a separate section then for the people? And what about those who do not have a father or someone that's ordained, or someone, they don't have anyone that can be ordained? But what about the rest of the girls? I make a differentiation to say that it's not a matter of encouragement. The diaconate and standing here is not a matter of encouragement. Being ordained as a chanter, as a reader, as a subdeacon is not a matter of encouragement. It doesn't keep people in the church. And you all know, and I hear it count, it's a recorder in my mind. A woman comes to me, she tells me, ده كان شماس في الكنيسة. عارف الألحان وعارف كل حاجة. مش عارف إيه دلوقتي مش بيجي الكنيسة. This is a recording that happens. You can think, I'm sure, 5, 10 people off the top of your head in which this is the case, from childhood, from growing up as men, right? Like, this is not what keeps people in the church. Concerning the school of thought, again, I'm not disrespecting this school of thought. I'm not saying that it's something that is not appropriate. It could be appropriate in certain cases, but it's not what was received. It's not what was supposed to be happening. There's a period of time in the church. Why are we having a diaconate revival? Think about it like this. Because at some point, I don't know, I can't put dates on these things, but I will say early 20th century, right? Like so 1900s plus, right? There were no people to serve deacons. So the little kids that are 3 and 4 and 5 years old were ordained what? Deacons. Not chanters, deacons. Deacons. For someone to be ordained a deacon, they must be fully consecrated to God. They don't have any other job, right? This was known throughout the church history, right? But the church has to make some decisions as to what are they going to do. Are they going to have nobody serve in the altar? Are they going to ordain them as chanters and then have them do the responsibility as a deacon? Or are they going to ordain them as deacons and have them do the responsibility as of a deacon? So there's different schools of thought that have happened because of the lack of consecration of full deacons. Some have ordained little children as deacons, and so they began to do everything. And so we got used to seeing children in the altar and the spaces and next to Prolos and next to these fathers, which I'm not worthy of their names. You're talking about St. Prolos, I'm not worthy of saying his name. But there's different seasons of the church, and or different generations. And others, or they were ordained chanters, which is the norm for us now. They were ordained chanters and leaders, and they were allowed to do what the subdeacons and the deacons do, right? So what we're trying to do in the diaconate revival is to go back to what was supposed to be happening from before all of these exceptions started to be made. Again, I commend you as a father, and all of you, if you're fathers, or brothers, taking your little brother with you, I commend you for desiring to raise your children in the fear of God, wanting them to love the altar and the hymns. This is good. I encourage you. I want this to happen. What I'm trying to differentiate is that this is not what's necessary for that to happen. Could it be good? Yes, I'm not denying it could be very good. But there is another expense. It's at the expense of distractions. And like I said, it's not just me of myself. People have come and asked me to comment and to announce about these things and to say that it's a distraction. And so I'm being faithful to what I need to announce, what I need to say to the people. People have told me about the distractions of people standing, men and women standing on different sides, of people bringing their children up to the altar. And again, think about it. How are we going to, if it's a matter of encouragement, then what happens to all the little girls? Right? What about all the little boys that are not going to have deacons next to them?
I think as a distraction comes more even from the deacons more than.
Yeah, 100%. But that's why we don't have any all the things that I was saying we don't look west. That I'm just looking west and looking south.
And the people you're hearing from, the parents are probably the parents of the little deacons that have no control.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I commend you all. It's not easy, especially when you have 2 and 3 children. Your wife is one human being, right? It's a lot. But we're trying to speak about these principles so we can say, okay, if this is the case, how can we apply this? How can we adhere to this order? What can we do differently? I've seen in churches the little children, they're not just standing there, but they're playing the instruments, they're playing the piano, they're playing the cymbals. What's the difference between them and the other children? Why are we making an exception for this? And then we're saying you have to be prepared to be a chanter and a reader and a subdeacon and all these things. Before the diocese existed, right, there was no rule as to how old someone had to be a chanter, right? But the diocese had a rule of 6 years old. There's a reason for that. Because if we start allowing this, then all the little children will be ordained. And we're going to lose the reverence. We're trying to raise the state of the reverence. We're trying to raise the state of the reverence of the altar itself, and what it means to wear a white tunic. That's it. Again, I commend you all, and I'm thankful that you were having this discussion, and we're able to say that we want to raise. I know, I don't doubt for a second, when I see a father with a child in an altar on the side here, I don't doubt for a second you're being faithful as a father. Not for a second. But it's not, I'm not considering it a matter of faithfulness or of faithful, being a wise father and wanting your child. I'm considering it a matter of order in the church. Yes?
So you mentioned the word diaconate revival.
Yeah.
Like if you said that in the beginning, forgive me, I may have missed it, but what is that? Is that a diocese thing?
Yes, so before I was ordained as a bishop, I don't know exactly what year, but the North American bishops have a biannual meeting, so twice a year, and there was a discussion of what's going on with the diaconate ranks, and the deacons and are supposed to be the ones serving off, the full deacons, right? So what do we do? How can we take the next step in this, right? And here in North America, it's a younger church, younger dioceses, right? So in dioceses like what we were talking about, and these things have been received from us, so it's much more difficult to make these transitions. So for us here, if we can do this, then let us do this. And actually, in some cases, we're saying maybe this would be an opportunity for Egypt to pick up some of these things. We learned so much stuff from Egypt, definitely, the mother church, but maybe we have a more controlled situation. So that, in summary, to not like say, what's the diaconate revival? In essence, it's that subdeacons will serve, they'll be the only ones serving in the altar on Saturday night and Sunday morning, and that readers will be the only ones reading on Saturday night and Sunday morning. And that it's not, when you're ordained a chanter, a reader, or subdeacon, you have certain roles, not just that everyone can be ordained. And before, we didn't have subdeacons ordained in the diocese at all. So prior to us starting this in 2019, I believe, or 2018, I don't remember, and there was no subdeacons in the diocese, they wasn't ordained. Again, because of all the things that we're talking about, because it's a calling, and because so many things are similar between subdeacon, priest, deacon, deacon, priest, and bishop.
Does that mean there's an intent to ordain full deacons and archdeacons in the future?
But by God's grace, if we're ready for that, and we find the people that are by God's grace called to that, for example, in Tampa Bay, there's one man, and he's, God willing, going to be ordained a deacon at the end of this year. And so he'll be serving as a deacon, and he's not going to be serving as a priest. It's not a stepping stone to the priesthood. He's going to be serving as a deacon to do the responsibilities of a deacon. And yes, he'll have the liturgical responsibilities, but he also is going to be serving on the board. He's going to be serving in administrative and financial matters. He's going to be serving the widows and orphans, and being able to serve in other capacities in the church, not just in liturgical matters. No?
With a salary?
By God's grace, the blessing.
You will take a salary.
Yeah, the blessing.
Yeah, in California, there are many deacons.
Yeah, so it's almost like in the house campus and other fathers.
He will be wearing the
Yeah, he's fully consecrated, just like a priest. So he has no other job, and if he's married, then he remains married. And he cannot get remarried if, God forbid, his wife is apart. And if he's not married, then he remains celibate, or he loses his rank. That's how this was. And so you're understanding, subdeacons, that rule was applied to subdeacons originally. Originally it was applied to subdeacons. But because, again, things develop, and say you cannot apply to subdeacons. At some point in the church, I don't know when, that was no longer applied to subdeacons.
برضه نيابتك قلت لنا برضه قبل كده على موضوع ان الالتر ما حدش يدخل غير الالتر only. Until now we are not applying that rule. All the deacon goes. I don't like the way we have the altar during the communion. I think I should wait for نيابتك to stress on the part who is present of the maybe only the 4 deacons can be taking the communion in the altar only, and the same if a winner comes on the 2 sides, and the deacons they can go out straight. Is this because I think all the churches they did that, all the deacons goes and they circle around the altar, and it's during that it's too crowded and it's so distraction and for the respect of the altar.
So this is not a matter of a decision. It's not a decision that the diocese says all the churches must do this. There's a difference between the diocese saying this blessing, or is presenting something that would help in terms of the reverence towards the altar, the reverence towards the diaconate and the liturgical ranks, versus it's something that is ICE saying you must do this. Chanters will not be ordained unless they are 6 years old and above. Subdeacons will not be ordained unless they are 21 years and above, and they've taken the test and they've passed the test. Readers need to be servants in the church. These are things that must be applied, because the diocese is putting his together, and he's expecting everyone to follow. But this is not one of those things that must be applied, because some of the churches, when they were built, they were not built in such a way, it's more difficult for them to get into the altar, so they end up being, some of the churches are small, they don't even have a side room. So they end up coming out with it's just different in different churches. So it's not meant to, I would wish that all the churches that can apply it would apply it. We leave this to the discretion of the woman, or the fathers, one of the priests, or the priest that is serving, to be able to apply it or not apply it. Yes?
So you mentioned earlier that ordaining is not about a fact of encouragement, and that subdeaconship specifically is a calling, just like priesthood. So what's the logistics of how you intend to ordain subdeacons? Is it like once someone turns 21, they take the test and go ahead? Or is it about, say, everyone who, for example, sees all these people, this certain group, or this person is here all the time, serving all the time, and he goes to them and says, like, hey, would you like to be ordained a subdeacon? Like, what's the methodology that you would like with this revival, and how subdeaconship should go?
It should be that certainly it's not a matter of just turning 21. And certainly it's not just a matter of passing the test. Those are simple formalities to help so that the people that are being nominated for this rank are of some sort of, I don't want to label it as a quality, because someone can be very pious and very simple, right? Can be a very good, holy person. It's not about knowledge. It's not about even knowing all the rites and things. Someone can know them and can be very proud, right? Someone can know all these things and look very pious in the church, and outside they're doing everything, and people are stumbling. So that's why the first thing that I mentioned was what? What's the first thing I mentioned? Father of confession. Father of confession. I need to be following up regularly my father of confession. If I am a servant in the church, it is dangerous for me to serve without father of confession. Every month and a half to 2 months, I'm meeting with them, repenting and confessing. I'm not telling stories, I'm not asking for guidance. You could ask for guidance, but that's not confession. It's different from confession. 5 minutes. I'm taking my spiritual bath. I'm holding myself accountable before God. That's why it should be with the blessing of a father of confession, at least number one. If the father of confession is different from the parish priest, then they need his blessing as well. The deacon coordinator, they see that they're attending. They're fulfilling the responsibilities. There are responsibilities that are listed on the diocese website, as to what the person should know, should be familiar with, how to lead the raising of incense services, how to lead and know the liturgical prayers. It's not that you need necessarily a course to teach these things. However, if people don't know and they're being prepared for this, how are they going to prepare? They haven't learned their whole entire life by attending, by just seeing these things. So there needs to be some sort of a course or some sort of class that's offered for them to be able to learn the rites of the services, how to pray, these things like holding the simple things that maybe they never received. Some of us have been blessed to be able to receive from other fathers that taught us these things. That taught us. I remember my father at confession when I was young, and I would come late for the liturgy. I'm a little kid. I don't drive a car, right? So for whatever reason, I'm late, right? The liturgy, let's say, started at 8 o'clock. I would come before, let's say, during the epistle readings, or before the absolution of the ministers, right? And I know that I'm there before the absolution of the ministers. You'd ask me how late are you, right? And what else would we do? We would say, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. He would say, no, you're 15 minutes late, 50. You're 45 minutes late, you're an hour late, whatever it is, right? Because we were taught just by these comments. We're supposed to be there from the beginning of Matins, because we're supposed to be there to prepare all of these things. So again, to answer your question, it goes back to Father of Confession, the priest of the church, the deacon coordinator, whoever else has been appointed for that rank. So whether people are appointed to oversee the chanters, the readers, the subdeacons, church. Yes. Yeah.
I'll save it for after. It's like a moldua.
It's a moldua.
I don't want to hold it.
Any other questions? I know we prolonged, actually, we can go 1 hour. We've so far gone 2+ hours. So, any other comments or questions? Okay.
We need a promise when Menek said that to get a quarterly or half a year, so we can put it in the agenda, so to continue the teaching for us. If you don't mind, if you can put it for us, please.
I really encourage you to start, by you all being here and the questions that you're asking, and if you don't know some of these things that we've discussed, start a class. Start a regular class for the diaconate, not just to learn hymns, diaconate, to learn the diaconate. You know, we have a whole institute in the diocese, a 2-year program called the SAP Institute, and you learn the history of these things. Like I just mentioned 2 or 3 canons, right? There's plenty of canons about the different ranks of the church, right? And they learn the history of all these different ranks and what has happened, and yes, they learn the hymns, the history of the hymns and how to say them, the history of the rites. So I encourage you, and that's what's happened since the beginning of this revival. There have been churches that they had hymns classes, but they started a deacon school, right? Or they started a school in general, like St. Stephen's School, so they had men and women attend, right? They just had a school for the diaconate, teaching the rites, teaching the history of the church, the ecclesiastical things, iconography, the architecture of the church, the order of the church. Why is the Megale facing this way? Why is this Megale supposed to be over there facing that way? Right? Why do we pray these prayers in this way? Why do we enter into the church and do so? What do we pray when we enter the church? Right? These are things that, the highest rank of the diaconate should certainly know. Right? And I'm not expecting you to just know it on your own. Part of it needs to be delivered to you. So I really encourage you to start the class here regularly. However regular you would be able to commit. Do once a week, do once a week. Not able to, do it once every 2 weeks, do it once a month. But having a regular class, and this could be part of what you're asking for what's expected. I am expecting that anyone that's of the diaconate ranks is growing in their understanding of that responsibility. So the chanter, yes, they have some basic understanding of how to say the responses for the basic St. Basil liturgy, but they're also growing in how to chant in the different seasons, the different tunes, the different Lord have mercy, like everyone said, the different way of chanting the psalms. The reader is learning about the readings, about the katamars. Why are we reading these readings for this saint? Who's supposed to know this stuff? Yes, the common faithful can know it. Who's going to teach it to them? It's supposed to be the diaconate ranks, right? Same thing with the subdeacon. Let's stand and pray. Establish for us your peace and forgive us our sins, for that is the power, the glory, the blessing, and life forever. Amen. Thank you, Lord, for gathering us together in peace. We thank you, Lord, for allowing us to enter into the church, for giving us one another as a support, to grow in our relationship with you. Thank you, Lord, for allowing us to serve you called Christians, to be called deacons in your holy church, to be called priests and bishops in your holy church. We thank you, Lord, for these graces you bestowed upon us, Lord. Grant us, Lord, each of us to be faithful and my stewards of all the people and things you've entrusted to us in this life. Bless us, Lord, the remainder of this night for the glory of your name. Allow us to depart, Lord, never allow us to depart from your presence. The intercessions of St. Mary, our Mother, and St. Anthony the Great, and St. Paul the First of the Hermits, and St. Paul Clovis the Sixth, make us, Lord, worthy to pray thankfully. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. In Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine is the kingdom, power, and glory, forever and ever. The love of God, the Father, the grace of His only begotten Son, Lord God and Savior Jesus Christ, communion and gift of the Holy Spirit be with you all. Go in peace, the peace of the Lord be with you all.
Can we take a picture with Sayyidina, please, all of us? Come close to the altar and we'll take a picture for our meeting. Yeah, well, there is some fruit and refreshment in the car. Let's come, everybody, come close to Sayyidina.
يلا يا جماعة.
Let's come كرولوس.
طب اعمل اوقف الستريمينج ولا اسيبه؟
لا سيبه يتفرج.
هو